Managerial Accounting, Manufacturer's Cost Flows. Now, the cost flows for a manufacturer start with the same item that the production process starts with, and that is with raw materials. So we're going to look at raw materials inventory first and see how costs flow through that inventory, and then follow through to the next two inventory accounts of a manufacturer. Of course, unless this is the very first period that the business is operating, the inventory account is going to start out with a beginning balance. And that beginning balance will be the materials that were purchased in a previous period but had not yet been used by the end of that period. A basic rule is that last month's ending inventory is exactly the same inventory that we start with as we begin this month. So we start with a beginning balance. Then during the period, the manufacturer will make purchases of raw materials. And those purchases add to or increase the cost that is recorded in the raw materials inventory account. Then, of course, we buy the raw materials for the purpose of using them in making our product. So during the period, production will requisition raw materials. Requisitions flow out of, so they decrease the raw materials inventory account, flow out of that inventory account and flow into the production inventory account, which is going to be work in process. Now, beginning balance plus the materials that were purchased this period minus the materials that were requisitioned into production will yield the ending balance of that raw materials inventory account. And the ending balance of an inventory account is an asset which is reported on the balance sheet. So beginning balance plus purchases minus requisitions of raw materials yields the ending balance of raw materials inventory. Now, before we move on to the next inventory account, I want to talk just a minute about these requisitions of raw materials. Some manufacturers will keep only one or will keep separate raw materials inventory accounts. Raw materials inventory would be the specific inventory account in which the cost of direct materials, those materials that are an integral part of the finished product, the cost would be kept in that inventory account, and then separate inventory accounts would be kept for lubricants, which are manufacturing overhead, or supplies that are used for maintenance, or janitorial supplies. Those would be kept in separate inventory accounts. But some manufacturers keep only one inventory account. So when that's the case, when the requisition is prepared, we have to be able to track which of these are direct materials, and the direct materials will flow into the work in process account directly, and we also need to separate those requisitions which are for indirect materials. And you recall from the direct versus indirect product cost video that indirect materials are part of manufacturing overhead. So the cost of the indirect materials would be recorded in the manufacturing overhead control account. And then at the end of the period, or when the products are complete, we would charge part of that manufacturing overhead control cost to the work in process inventory account. And we'll see more about that when we look at work in process. So that's the cost flows through raw materials inventory. Now let's look at the next step, which is the work in process inventory account.